Welcome to latest news blaster. In a shocking twist. Just hours before Sean Diddy Combs is set to be sentenced on his 2 federal Mann Act convictions, the story has taken a wild new turn, as the woman prosecutors once labeled as Victim 3 has now come forward with a jaw-dropping letter that could completely change the narrative, with Virginia Huynh, better known during the trial as Gina, blasting the government's handling of the case and defending the music mogul in an emotional plea to the judge, saying she never considered herself a victim, and accusing prosecutors of trying to force her into a role she never wanted. A revelation that leaves both the courtroom and the public stunned, because throughout the trial the government painted a chilling picture of Diddy as a manipulative and abusive figure who allegedly transported women across state lines for prostitution, orchestrated disturbing encounters, and held dark power over those around him. Yet Gina has now shattered that portrait by saying she cooperated fully with the investigation, sat down 3 times to answer every question, and even handed over all her texts, photos and videos, only to feel like she was being cornered into a script she did not agree with, as she explains in her letter that no matter how many times she told prosecutors she wasn't trafficked, wasn't coerced, and wasn't a victim of Diddy, they kept telling her she was, pressuring her to conform to the narrative that would strengthen their indictment, a move she says was not only dishonest but damaging to her personally, because she felt stripped of her own voice in the process. And what makes this development even more explosive is Gina's resurfaced claims from earlier in the proceedings when she testified that during one of her most vulnerable moments, she was pregnant, and allegedly told Diddy about it, only for him to react with shocking violence by kicking her in the stomach. An allegation that prosecutors used at the time to paint him as monstrous. Yet, Gina's latest letter complicates that picture by suggesting she never wanted to be showcased as a victim, and is now actively standing by Diddy ahead of sentencing, saying the narrative spun by the government doesn't represent her truth, which not only undermines the prosecution's credibility, but also throws into question how much of the trial was shaped by genuine victim accounts versus what Gina claims was manipulation and pressure, and as if the case wasn't dramatic enough, her defense of Diddy is expected to weigh heavily in the judge's consideration when deciding how many years the hip-hop icon will serve, with some legal experts already speculating that such a turn could lead to a lighter sentence or even provide grounds for appeal in the future, because if the government's witnesses are now openly saying they were forced into victim roles, it shakes the foundation of the conviction itself, though prosecutors are unlikely to admit wrongdoing and will argue Gina's statements don't erase the guilty verdict on the 2 Mann Act counts, while Diddy's supporters are celebrating her bravery and saying this finally exposes the witch hunt narrative they have been pushing all along, and critics meanwhile are pointing out the contradictions, asking how Gina can simultaneously say she's not a victim, while also previously describing the horrific moment she was pregnant and allegedly kicked in the stomach, a claim that horrified the courtroom when it was first aired, and whether or not that event happened exactly as described. The fact that Gina is now publicly siding with Diddy shows just how fractured and complicated this case has become, with questions about witness credibility, prosecutorial overreach, and the true nature of Diddy's relationships with the women around him swirling in every headline. And beyond the courtroom, the cultural impact is seismic as fans, critics, and celebrities debate whether this is proof Diddy has been unfairly targeted in a biased system desperate to make an example of a powerful black entertainer, or whether it's simply the latest example of how abuse victims sometimes change their stories out of fear, loyalty, or manipulation, and social media is ablaze with reactions as hashtags like #DiddyTrial, #JusticeForDiddy, and #ProsecutorExposed trend, with some calling Gina a hero for speaking her truth against government pressure, and others blasting her for undermining other women who came forward. But no matter which side you fall on, the undeniable fact is that Gina's last-minute letter is a bombshell that throws gasoline on an already raging fire, and with Diddy's sentencing less than 24 hours away, the world is waiting to see whether this stunning twist, the so-called victim standing by the man she was supposed to testify against, will actually tip the scales in his favor, or whether the judge will see through it as a desperate last-ditch effort to soften the blow of a prison term that could forever alter the legacy of one of music's most controversial icons, leaving the entertainment world holding its breath for what comes next in the most shocking celebrity trial of the decade. As The clock ticks down to Sean Diddy Combs' sentencing. The tension surrounding the case has only intensified, and Gina's unexpected letter of support has become the center of a media storm that refuses to calm. With major networks, online platforms, and legal analysts dissecting every word of her statement and its potential impact on what was already being called one of the most sensational celebrity trials in recent history. And what makes this story so captivating is not just the fall of a hip-hop mogul once hailed as an industry powerhouse, but the layers of conflicting narratives, emotional testimony, and shocking allegations that have created a saga almost too dramatic for Hollywood itself. Because while the prosecution spent months building a case portraying Diddy as a manipulative and abusive figure, orchestrating interstate travel for prostitution, and maintaining what they described as a disturbing empire of control, Gina's latest stance throws a wrench into that carefully crafted image, suggesting that even the people the government labeled as victims may not fully agree with the roles they were assigned, raising questions about whether the case was ever about justice for real victims or simply about bringing down a high-profile figure at any cost. And this latest development has ignited fierce debate, not only about Diddy's guilt or innocence, but about the very integrity of the justice system. Because if a woman like Gina, who previously testified that she was pregnant when Diddy allegedly kicked her in the stomach, a claim that shocked the courtroom and painted him as irredeemably violent, is now insisting she was pressured into calling herself a victim, then what does that say about the reliability of the case as a whole? And while some argue that this contradiction reveals cracks in her credibility, others point out that the human psyche is complicated, especially in relationships marked by power imbalances, manipulation, and trauma, and that it is not uncommon for people to vacillate between seeing themselves as victims and protecting their abusers, a cycle that has been documented in countless abuse cases. But in Gina's telling, this isn't about confusion or trauma, it's about prosecutors forcing a label onto her that she rejected from the very beginning, and her willingness to go on record and publicly blast them just before sentencing shows she is determined to take control of her narrative, no matter how inconvenient it might be for the government's case. And the ripple effects of her decision are being felt everywhere, from the legal community, where experts are debating whether her statements could be grounds for a post-trial motion, to the entertainment world, where celebrities and fans are split down the middle, some rallying around Diddy and claiming this proves he has been the victim of a smear campaign, and others condemning Gina for undermining other women's allegations with her sudden shift. But the real drama is inside the courtroom, where the judge must weigh not only the guilty verdicts, but also the powerful appeals from both sides. And Gina's letter, raw, emotional, and unapologetic, adds a level of unpredictability that could influence sentencing in ways no one expected, because judges, though bound by the law, are human, and seeing a supposed victim defend the accused so passionately might sway opinions about his character, especially when Diddy's legal team will no doubt use her words to argue that the government's portrayal was exaggerated and misleading. Yet this case is about more than one letter, more than one witness, because the allegations against Diddy span decades and include multiple women whose stories echo themes of coercion, manipulation, and abuse. But Gina's defiance chips away at the unified front the prosecution tried to present, creating fractures that Diddy's defense is eager to exploit. And beyond the legal arena, the cultural conversation is exploding, with hashtags flooding social media, think pieces filling blogs, and podcasts dissecting every angle, from the morality of defending powerful men to the psychology of women who retract or contradict abuse claims. And all of this is playing out in real time as Diddy, once a billionaire mogul celebrated for his business empire and music legacy, now faces the reality of prison, his brand in tatters, his reputation shredded, and his future uncertain. Yet even in this downfall, he remains a lightning rod for attention, debate, and controversy, and Gina's intervention, whether seen as courageous or misguided, has ensured that the Diddy trial will not be remembered simply as a straightforward conviction, but as a messy, complicated, and deeply human drama that reflects larger issues about power, justice, and truth in America today. And with sentencing set to unfold tomorrow, the world is waiting, holding its breath, and wondering whether Gina's explosive letter will be the turning point that changes everything, or just another dramatic twist in a case already overflowing with them. Because at the end of the day, what's at stake is not just the fate of Sean Diddy Combs, but the credibility of the legal system, the trust of the public, and the legacy of one of the most polarizing figures in modern music history, leaving us all on the edge of our seats for the final verdict in a trial that has already rewritten the rulebook on celebrity scandal, courtroom drama, and the blurred lines between victimhood and loyalty.
We hope this report touched your heart. Support our work by liking, sharing, and subscribing right now. More dramatic, emotional, and exclusive updates are coming soon. Don't miss them. Stay connected with us and never miss a story that shapes history.